This is the Grand Canyon, an iconic natural wonder that stretches over 270 miles across the Arizona desert and plunges more than a mile deep in some areas. It's not just a symbol of the American Southwest, but a globally cherished landscape. Many consider it the seventh natural wonder of the world, and it's been protected as a national park for over a century. But the Grand Canyon isn't the only treasure in the region. Just adjacent to it lies the Kaibab National Forest, another federally protected area rich in wildlife, forests, and scenic beauty. One would think that any kind of industrial operation, especially something as dangerous as uranium mining, would be strictly prohibited here. And yet, just outside the boundaries of Grand Canyon National Park, that's exactly what's happening. What you're looking at is a mining operation, complete with heavy machinery, a man-made pond, and dump trucks running back and forth through the forest. At first glance, this seems like a clear violation of federal laws protecting national parks and forests. But this mine is operating legally, and the more you learn about it, the more concerning the situation becomes. Let's rewind. Imagine you're driving down a remote road in northern Arizona. The scenery is serene, pine forests, desert mesas, the kind of landscape you'd expect in a place that draws over 6 million tourists a year. But among the trucks that pass by on this quiet road are some with a dangerous cargo, radioactive wastewater. These trucks are transporting toxic, uranium-contaminated water from a uranium mine located just south of the Grand Canyon to a distant processing facility in Utah. Over 130 such shipments have traveled through the forest, raising a critical question. Where does this radioactive water come from? And why is it here? The answer begins with uranium mining, a practice that has long been controversial in the American West. At the heart of this story is the Pinyon Plain Mine, formerly known as the Canyon Mine. Located just a few miles south of the Grand Canyon South Rim, this site has become the center of environmental and public health concerns. The mine sits in a forest that's supposed to be protected, and yet, Energy Fuels, a US-based uranium company, was able to revive and operate it. How is that possible? It turns out the Pinyon Plain Mine was originally approved in the 1980s, during the Cold War, a time when demand for uranium soared. The mine contains about 1.6 million pounds of uranium in nearly 83,000 tons of ore, making it one of the richest deposits in the U.S. Though operations paused when uranium prices dropped, the approval was never revoked. So, when Energy Fuels decided to restart development in 2016, they didn't need new permits, even though a federal ban in 2012 prohibited new uranium mines within nearly 1 million acres around the Grand Canyon. This loophole allowed the mine to move forward. But reopening the site brought serious consequences. During construction in 2016, workers accidentally pierced an underground aquifer, causing groundwater to rush into the mine shaft. That water became contaminated with radioactive elements from the uranium-rich rock. And once that happens, it can't just be left there. By 2019, over 10 million gallons of radioactive water had been pumped out of the mine. That water was first stored in on-site ponds, large artificial basins meant to temporarily hold the waste. But there's a problem. These ponds can overflow, especially during Arizona's rainy seasons. To reduce volume, Energy Fuels began spraying the contaminated water into the air with industrial mist cannons, literally aerosolizing radioactive waste and allowing wind to carry it into the surrounding Kaibab National Forest. This method is not only alarming, it's dangerous. The surrounding area is home to a diverse ecosystem. Black bears, deer, bobcats, coyotes, and wild turkeys, all living in the very forest where these radioactive particles may now be settling. And the forest is not just a home for wildlife, it's a sacred space for the Havasupai tribe, whose ancestral lands include the Grand Canyon region. Adding to the concern, the containment ponds are not securely fenced. Small animals can access the radioactive water for drinking or bathing. In 2017, before Energy Fuels had arranged transportation to Utah, the company deliberately dumped radioactive wastewater directly into the surrounding forest when the pond reached capacity. That's not just a mistake. It's a decision with long-term consequences. But let's take a step back. Why does uranium mining produce so much toxic waste? The process is inefficient by design. For every 2,000 pounds of raw uranium ore, only about 1 to 5 pounds of usable uranium is extracted. That means hundreds of tons of waste, known as tailings, are left behind for every ton of uranium obtained. These tailings contain a cocktail of radioactive elements: thorium-230, radium-226, radon-222, and polonium-210. All of them are harmful, and some can remain dangerous for thousands of years. Left exposed, tailings can dry out and become dust. easily carried by wind for miles across the landscape, or they can leach into the groundwater. This is a hypothetical. On Navajo lands in Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona, uranium mining left behind 4 million tons of radioactive waste between 1944 and 1986. The fallout was devastating. Higher rates of cancer, kidney failure, and birth defects, some of which still affect those communities today. Even babies born now in those areas show elevated levels of uranium in their bodies. That's how long these contaminants stay in the environment. Back at the Grand Canyon, the Pinyon Plain mine continues to produce radioactive wastewater. The company now transports much of this water to its White Mesa Mill in Utah, another controversial site. But even that can't solve the underlying issue. This mine continues to threaten both the air and the water of one of America's most treasured landscapes. Recent testing has revealed just how dangerous the contamination is. The mine water contains uranium at 130 parts per billion, over 4 times the EPA limit for safe drinking water. It also contains lead at 812 times the legal limit and arsenic at 243 times the limit. These are not small missteps. These are massive red flags. To make matters worse, the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality initially claimed that a rock layer beneath the mine would prevent water contamination, but a 2024 study based on decades of data told a different story. There's little evidence that groundwater won't be contaminated, and if radioactive materials reach the aquifer, they could easily make their way to the Grand Canyon Springs and eventually into the Colorado River, a water source relied upon by 40 million people. And it's not just liquid waste that poses a danger. Dry uranium tailings, left in piles, can easily be scattered by desert winds. In dry seasons, this dust can travel far, potentially affecting communities and ecosystems miles from the original site. The Havasupai tribe has repeatedly spoken out against the mine. They've seen the long-term impact of uranium exposure firsthand and don't want history to repeat itself in their sacred homeland. Their concerns are justified. In 1979, a dam holding back radioactive tailings at a uranium plant in Church Rock, New Mexico, collapsed. Over 1,000 tons of solid radioactive waste and 90 million gallons of toxic liquid poured into the Puerco River. Though the plant wasn't on tribal land, the contaminated water flowed downstream, directly into Navajo Nation territory. It poisoned the land, the water, and the people. That disaster remains the largest radioactive spill in U.S. history, worse even than the 3 Mile Island nuclear accident. And now, history risks repeating itself, right next to one of the most protected natural landmarks in the world. So how is this still allowed? It all goes back to an outdated law, the General Mining Act of 1872, passed during America's westward expansion. The law gives mining companies rights to public lands, with virtually no environmental oversight. The Pinyon Plain Mines permits were granted decades ago under that law, before modern environmental protections existed. So even though a 2012 ban blocks new uranium mines in the area until 2032, older projects like this one are grandfathered in. As of today, the ban has stopped over 800 new uranium mining claims. But what happens after 2032? Unless the ban is renewed or stronger protections are enacted, companies could once again flood the Grand Canyon region with mining operations. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the area still contains an estimated 93,000 tons of uranium. That's a fortune in today's market, especially with growing global interest in nuclear energy. But at what cost? If the price of revitalizing uranium production is the contamination of sacred lands, the destruction of forests, and the poisoning of one of the nation's most vital rivers, then perhaps it's a price too high to pay. Because some places are worth more than the minerals beneath them, and the Grand Canyon is one of them.